Hi, Marcus.
Well,
Sean, I thought you had a wig on when I first took a look at you. I thought you had a wig on with that rock behind you.
I have a wig. I could go put it on, but it seems a little odd. Next month. Next
please
month.
do. Please do.
Yeah,
Please, that would be, yes.
slowly work us into it.
I feel like if we're still virtual for Halloween, showing up in costume wouldn't be like a horrible idea.
I get to borrow Sean's wig.
Hey, as part of the dredge operation this morning, and they were taking all the fish out of that area, they took a couple little crawdads out of there. I thought I'd see if we can't get a boil going.
Where did they get that from, Brett?
In the just right from the weir to the mouth of the lake.
Oh, yeah.
You guys should all come down here and take a look at this operation we're doing. It's very, very cool.
You can get it.
Right.
Oh, I thought he was going to get the wig.
Oh, wow. It's crowded.
Crawdad
Got the
boil.
stuff.
Oh, that's the dangerous stuff there.
John's prepared.
Hey, well,
All
let's
right,
get,
it's 6 o'clock. Let's go ahead and get started.
go ahead, Kim.
All right, this is a council workshop, virtual meet via Zoom, Tuesday, September 21st, 2021. And we have two things on the agenda: a staffing plan by Anya and replacement of police fleet vehicles by the chief. And so we'll start with the staffing plan. Anya.
All right, I'm gonna have Kelly drive through the PowerPoint for us so she can get that up.
And you have 3 minutes, right?
Oh gosh, I'm gonna talk really fast. You guys read everything, right? You guys read the whole PowerPoint and all the staffing charts, and you got it down, right? Okay, sweet. This will be a breeze. Well, just to recap quickly on the background slide, if you go to the next slide, Kelly. So last year we created this staffing plan, and we went through an exercise with the directors and the executive, like the whole executive team, and we asked them a series of questions. What are we not getting done that we need to? What is it that we want to do with the growth of the city? And we went through, looking at benchmarking and looking at span of control, looking at just future needs in general. And so this is in supplement, and this is going to be an update to that plan. It still only goes till approximately 2025, but it kind of gives you a good idea of, the changes from that last year to this year, and also just to share how we've grown staffing wise since we last talked.
Anya, I'm so sorry. I hate to interrupt. Are you seeing a whole screen? Or are you seeing a split?
I see the whole screen. I don't see the presentation mode. I just see the screen, the slide you're on, and then the slides to the left. I don't see the page 2 yet.
Huh. Okay. Because I am seeing something different. But can you see it okay right now?
Yeah, it's just not on page 2.
The full slide mode. Okay.
Can you
I'll try
change
to
to
work
the
on
next?
Yep.
Okay. There we go. Okay, so this is a current city org chart. I know it's really hard to see on the PowerPoint, which is why we gave you guys the PDF version. Hopefully you guys can zoom in if you want to see names and positions. And this is the current structure as of really like today, on what we have going on in the city. And to give you a quick breakdown, this slide and the next slide kind of shows a breakdown. But right now we currently are sitting at 98 staff. We had 8 separations in 2021, and we've hired 12 permanent staff. That does not include seasonals that we've hired and recently left. We promoted 4 staff this year, and we have 13 vacant positions. 6 of those are brand new positions that we're working on filling or in the works. And one of those is on hold, which is the engineering tech storm field tech in the public works department. So currently on track, we're right now we have 109.6 FTEs. So we have 3 part-timers. So if you're trying to do the math, that's why there's the number is a little off, because we have 3 part-time staff. let's see, anything else on the slide? Do we have any questions so far on the current statistics, or if you want me to repeat anything? Okay. So going in to, this is kind of breaks it down by department of the current FTEs that I just went over, the overview, and it kind of shows you where we're at currently. And then as we go in, I won't go to the next slide yet, but I'll kind of preface how we're going to go through this tonight is each department head is going to present their department and recap what their needs are. Some of it's repetitive of last year, and you might have seen the carryover from their 2022 requests from last year to this year. And this is more in preparation. We're going to focus on the 2022 requests, and that these are more, we know this is a staffing plan and it's a wish list. This is kind of what we envision the city needs. And then from here, we're hoping to get council's thoughts and blessings moving forward. And how do we fund this staffing plan, and what can we put realistically in the 2022 budget? And so that's kind of what we're looking for from you as we go along. We can recap at the end, and maybe we come back to with talking points at a later meeting. I know we're working through the budget stuff right now, and the mayor's preparing his budget in the next couple weeks. So it's kind of perfect timing for this. And I will just do one caveat that a lot of this, you know, in talking to department heads and planning for our staffing plan, is that with the sewer district assumption that is pending, that would change our plan quite drastically. And we would come back to council and represent what that would look like, an integration. So there is a lot of things that could change in this plan based off that. And so we have kept that in mind when we were making the staffing plan. And we've ensured that each of these departments' plans set us up for success to take over the sewer district when and if that happens in the future, near future. And what I mean by that is a lot of span of control issues will be set up for success if we assume those positions. So without further ado, if there's no questions on current state, we will go ahead and start with the police department. And Kelly, you can bring us to the next slide. So Chief.
So right now I currently have vacancies of 3 officers. As you can see under Sergeant Valvik's crew, I have 2 and 1 under Sergeant Summers. Today we just took off Officer Dreyer off of FTO, and he is now a solo officer filling a position under Sergeant Summers. I do have a deputy chief's position that's vacant. We're working on that currently today to get that out and get it advertised and work through it through next week. It'll be on a consent agenda to move that into a full-term position, because it was an interim position when Chief Dyer put it into place on May 1st. So we just need to move that into a full-time position, get it advertised and get it out. One of the other things we have is need to move from a minimum of 3 due to the size of the city, moving to a minimum of 4 officers to be able to respond appropriately to the calls for service that we were seeing. Also on the administrative side of things for records, we're trying to implement a body worn camera project and digital evidence, which will take on some additional staff hours that's needed to process that stuff. So we're looking to implement the record supervisor back into that for a span of control to make sure that we have the right span of control in place. And then right there, as you see, as a traffic officer, as you guys look at that, as you know, the #1 complaint we usually get in the city is parking and traffic. We need additional resources in that. So that is looking to a future request in 23 to 25, both for that and probably looking at a community relations crime prevention officer to be able to go out and look at and talk to community homeowners associations, senior citizens, do a citizens academy, those kinds of things. We're looking to implement a citizens academy next year in 2022 to see how well received that is from the community. Hopefully we get a lot of response and a lot of participation. So that will help us offset that in the future too.
Hey, Chief.
Sure.
This is Steve. Question for you. I know this isn't necessarily part of the, our traffic enforcement person is moving on, is retiring. So what are we doing to fill that critical position?
Well, right now we have him still in place. We have not officially gotten the request to retire yet. Right now we'd have to take somebody out of patrol to backfill that position. And right now, with the minimum staffing that we're running 24/7 right now in both crews, we're running at 3 minimum. So it's kind of hard to offset that. So if we end up doing that, that's a critical position, is trying to backfill. I have 3 chief interviews tomorrow, for 2 for laterals, 1 for an entry level, that we can hold to put into the background process and start filling some of these vacant spots in it. As you know, it's critical to be able to hire folks. I just got notification by a local city that's trying to hire traffic motorcycle officers and asking for a $15,000 sign on, or giving a $15,000 sign on bonus. So we're trying to be competitive with our regional departments that are around us and stuff, and trying to be competitive. So it's just trying to find the resources and trying to find the applicants. We're just not getting the applicants in place. Then we started out this process. We got 10 applicants for entry level. It's just not there. And we're down to our last 3 that we're trying to work through for entry levels.
And Chief Bazzizo, we aren't currently offering any sort of incentives, are we?
We are, for lateral positions, we're offering 10,000.
Okay, thanks.
So I will add,
I'm sorry, Anya, just one quick question for the chief. Based on our population and our city and so forth, what would be a typical staffing level for our
For
site?
us, yeah. So right now we are very below. So right now the average for the state is 1.47. We're at 0.96 per 1,000. So looking at that, and then the allocation model that I had, Ani, did that get in the packet?
that's what I was just gonna add, is that it didn't make it in the packet. I can send that to you guys right now, actually, or I can have Kelly send it.
And the allocation model will show you the number of hours that are required to handle the amount of calls for service, and then also look at the 60-40 split that Chief Dyer presented earlier when he was given the staff allocation model of being 60% reactive and 40% proactive. And we're starting to get that down to about 37% given the current staffing, even below that, because we're at minimum staffing. And with Costco coming in, the annexation coming in, our calls, we're seeing an increase in the annexation area for calls for service. So we've got to meet those needs also.
So I guess to follow up on that, instead of having a minimum of 3, we should be in the neighborhood of 5 or 6 officers on duty at one time, correct?
That would be a blessing, yes, to be able to answer the calls for service, the amount of calls for service. And when I did the staffing model, I thought it was going to be part of the package. Let me see if I can just pull my copy up here. Just one second.
I think we've always been down people on per shift, and just have always kind of made it do. But I thought part of getting accredited was us looking at staffing at a little bit higher of a level. Am I right with that, Chief?
Yes. We're trying to get to the staffing level that we need to be at to answer the calls for service, and also participate in the community events and get more involved in the community. And right now we're just meeting the basic needs. And most of the stuff, as you know, with COVID, they tried to switch over to the non-face-to-face contact, which is starting to see a little bit of toll on the services we provide. Our community is saying that they want more face-to-face interaction with our officers. And right now we're not able to give all that at 100%. And like you say, if we were looking at the national average, which is well over 2 officers per 1,000, is where you start looking at 5 to 6 officers.
It makes it also hard for us to do trainings when we're staffed at that low. Is that right? Or are we still getting some trainings in?
Well, it's hard to say right now with COVID. COVID stopped a lot of training. We were meeting the needs, but every day was a minimum staffing level. So we were backfilling shifts, paying some overtime and stuff like that, trying to meet that need. And, we do pay out quite a bit of overtime to meet the training needs, but the officers do need the training for the certifications and stuff they have. So,
right.
Chief, are you trying to share your screen? Do you want me to stop sharing?
No, it's
Okay.
going to take me a little bit to follow up, and I don't have very
okay.
good internet, so I don't want to kill everybody off. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
I just sent it to Kelly, so if Kelly could share that out. It has a great wealth of information on the allocation model that Chief's talking about. I'd also like to just add that to reiterate what Chief Bazzizo said in the beginning about the deputy police chief. just as a reminder, this position, the city council approved this as an interim in the summer for 6 months through December. And what we did was a 5% increase in pay. And since then, this model has worked out and has been, needed in the police department. This is something that is a permanent need. And instead of bringing it back in December, since Chief Bezizo got his promotion, he vacated that position. We can't wait to fill this position. And it's really tough to recruit an interim police chief that we don't know if it would go permanent. But it doesn't really change our plan as far as if we were to start hiring for it now, the start date and the effective, budget impact would still be January 1, because it takes quite a bit of time to go through a police hiring process with all the background and polygraph and all the hoops we got to jump through for that. So basically what we're going to ask for council is put on the consent agenda for next week is to approve the permanent deputy police chief job class so we can at least start the hiring process for a projected start date of January 1.
So Anya, the $28,052 it's listed on the estimated cost, salary and benefits, is that for the entire year or is that just for 6 months? That's what it would cost above a commander's pay and benefits right now.
That's just for a 1-year impact for
Okay.
2022. Great question. Yep. Any other questions on the police proposed org chart?
Yeah, I got a question. If we're at 0.96 in Lake Stevens, if we got the 2 police officers that we wanted here and that you have as trying to get in here right now, what would that level be at that point then? Would be at 1, 1.2?
Yes. So what's Russ, are you on here? I guess, with the update and the increase with the annexation, I'm not sure what that, is it like 39,000, I believe, roughly what they're bringing into the city, right? So you could divide 39,000 by the number of officers that we have, which would be 35, 36, 37. So just I'll give you a rough estimate here.
What I was thinking
Yeah,
about. as you were talking,
0.105. Yeah. Sorry, Russ. I was just trying to figure out. It's about 39,000, right, with the annexation. What
Yep,
we're
just under
predicting.
39,000.
Yeah. So you'd be looking at 0.105 just with the officers, the 4 officers, or the 6 in that squad there. So you have a sergeant, a corporal, and then the 4 officers, and each one would be at 6. So that would give us up to the 37.
Hey,
I would,
Chief,
be
below the
interested, I would
average,
be
Kim.
interested in seeing what it would cost to place another officer in each of the shifts or each of your groups here, 4 more officers besides the 2. So 6 officers. That's
Okay.
what I'd be interested in seeing.
Councilman
I would agree with
Daughtry,
that, Councilman Daughtry.
I'm
Um,
sorry, Gary.
I would agree with that analysis.
So, some of us have been on the council for quite a while. We have always been fighting, chasing our tail on the police department and public works. And I want to fix it. And I don't know what we got to do citywide to make that happen. And I know that we'll all talk about that. The budget is a big deal. And I know that Brett's got some great ideas for this next year, things like that coming up, but I'm getting tired of chasing our tail on this stuff. It's just not right for the community for us to be chasing our tail on this.
So Kim, if you went 4 more than the 2 that are already on here, you're talking about $432,000 extra dollars. You're about $108,000 an officer.
That's
part of it
total.
to phase it in. Part of it is phasing over the year. I mean, I see where you're going with this, Kim. Try to take a phase-in approach over the year so that way we can keep that down a little bit, and then both our tax revenues will be going up a little bit.
Well, I don't mind how we do it. I just think we need to do it. I mean,
Agreed.
you know, the staff are really good at coming up with these, you know, approaches on how to accomplish something. But what I feel is that as a council, we're not giving them the push to do it. And in my way of thinking, we need to push to get this done. I'm tired. Like I said, I'm tired of chasing our tail. This is ridiculous. We did a major annexation. We're having problems with filling police officers. That's going to be, I mean, you're going to have a phased approach just because we can't fill them. I mean, that's going to be an automatic thing.
Mhm.
I just feel that, you know, we ought to look at as a council and as a city, we ought to look at getting it up there. If it's not, you know, 5, then get it to 6, you know, whatever we need to do. We're going to have the same conversation with Public Works. I can tell you that right now.
Yeah. And also for that, as you got down here on the right corner, you see for the estimate of 2 officers is 217,054. So you could double that. That's 400, you know, like the mayor said, 400 and some officers, or 400 some thousand.
We'd be tripling that then.
Yeah. And then you have to put in the additional car too, because every 2 officers we hire, we have to get a patrol car. So.
Right. No, I understand the equipage, et cetera, that we have to do on that. So we would need to have the total on it, but that's just where I'm coming from.
I think it's good that we're having this conversation. I think that looking at the overall picture and the upcoming PowerPoint that Anya is going to present, I think we're in this position in multiple departments.
Yep.
So I think let's get the big picture, and then we're clearly going to have some difficult decisions to make.
Great. So with that, Kelly, I think we lost our PowerPoint. And Mary, yeah, we still can't hear you. Maybe you can try to call in if you want to comment or send a note.
Yeah, sorry about that. I like when you guys have a discussion for you to be able to see each other. So I'm going back and forth here.
Thank you.
But in saying that, I think it's taking a minute. Sorry.
Okay, well, we're going to go to slide 7. So we're just going to skip on ahead. So Eric is going to talk to us about the Public Works Department now. Eric, take the floor.
Okay. Good evening, Council. I'm going to stop my video because I'm freezing up here a little bit too, and maybe that will help. As we mentioned in previous slides, Public Works has a total of 35 employees, 3 current vacancies, and one is a street lead because he was promoted. And then we had some turnover and we have a promotion. So we have 2 crew worker 1 entry levels to backfill. And then the other 3, 2 of those were the already approved by council facility maintenance, janitorial positions. And the one that we have on hold is the storm tech. You'll see that bottom right there at the screen. That was budgeted, but we decided to hold off on it for a period until we got our GIS system implemented and fine-tuned, because a lot of that is going to be in the field cataloging our inventory as far as Public Works and stormwater goes. So we have just put that on hold. It's been floating there, but now we have the GIS Zachary on board, who's doing a great job, and now we'll be ready to fill that position. We've had this in front of you before, but we have a couple minor changes. Just the regulations and things going on with our MPDES permit. We're proposing to hire a surface water manager and then backfill the coordinator position. And then last year we had budgeted for the Public Works office assistant. That didn't go through last year, so we got that up on the board again. And then I know the parks discussion is later down the road, but the long-term plan was to hire a parks supervisor. So that is on the list. And then the big one here is a deputy director as we go through this accreditation process that we're super excited about, taking our department to the next level on professionalism and maintenance for our residents. That's a big one, along with getting our safety programs up and running, and then management of our capital projects, and then to talk about succession planning and things of that nature. So that's what we have in a nutshell. You're correct on not being nearly where we are. Basically, they call for employees per lane mile, and right now we have like one employee per 18 miles of roadway miles. We should be about half of that. We should be industry standards are about an employee per 10 lane miles. So it's kind of like the police calculation. But it's not based on population. It's based on how much maintenance is out there. So that just throwing that out there, that there's some norms in public works as well as far as number of employees. So yeah, not to take a lot of time, not a lot of changes, but I see Councilmember Frederick has his hand up.
Yes, thank you, Director. I guess my question, both you and the chief seem to have some pretty good ideas on what the ratios are for proper staffing of your departments, and that's great. I wonder if there is value in literally looking at this by position and say, by position, there is a staffing ratio that's required here so that we can take a deeper dive in planning to get both departments ultimately where they need to be. Because obviously, you have a significant cost here to get up with just these positions, which still won't get you to that ratio. And we've already discussed the police chiefs and the same thing. And I just wonder if we can't really drill into the math and the positions with the idea that we want to get these departments whole so we can get the services to people that they really deserve here in the city. Is that doable? Is that feasible?
I don't see why it wouldn't be, no.
Eric, didn't you do some type of position allocation model where you were tracking time and work orders and the needs? I think last year, I think it was before I came, but I think I heard a little bit about it.
Yeah, we'd need to pull that back out and update it.
If I could, I just want to chime in and really support this deputy director. If you can imagine, every single project, permits, everything goes through the director's, the public works director, his hands at this point, and that is a massive scope of responsibility, and we don't have backup for that. And as you know, that's a scary situation to be in, and I'm always a big fan of having redundancy, because at any day somebody gets sick or move on to another job, anything can happen, and you always got to have a backup plan. And right now we just don't have it, and we surely saw it the past year and a half with COVID. People get sick and they're gone. An hour from now, somebody bounces out with a positive test and there is no backup. And so you'll see that theme throughout our presentations, is that we're really trying to make sure that we've got coverage. Whether we can afford it is a different topic, but we want to make sure the council understands we're looking at this holistically and want to make sure we have a solid city infrastructure here for you.
And just to add on top of that, I see Angie's got a question up, but I just want to jump on the deputy director also will just help with that span of control and set us up for success if and when we assume the sewer district. Also, it allows the public works director to be more over strategy and policy, similar to the arguments why we're establishing a permanent deputy chief. So with these departments growing so fast and with so many people, there's just not enough layers of supervision and leadership. And it also helps with, succession planning, like Jean mentioned, is right now, if the public works director were to leave, who would we put in his place? Who do we have ready for that next step? So this is really helpful in that direction. And it gives our internal staff steps to look forward to as well, and growth opportunities.
Thank you, James, for that input. Go ahead, Councilmember Jorstad.
Thank you. I have a fairly good understanding of the barriers of hiring and retaining law enforcement personnel. Can you talk a little bit about what are you facing in public works in terms of turnover and hiring and keeping staff? I know there's been some turnover in public works. There's some open positions. I'd like to hear more about what factors you think are contributing to that and what we can do to sort of address some of those issues.
Sure. It's been tough. I think we went through, for an example, 3 different candidates to backfill the city engineer position. There's a lot of competition out there for engineers right now, and outside what we were able to negotiate with the candidates. So it took, almost 4 months. And it was kind of funny because we didn't notice the impact of not having Grace here for the first couple months. But then now, 4 months later, it's like, wow, we are way behind and missed a bunch of things. So any type of managers or executive positions are really tough to find people. They've got jobs. And it goes right down the chain, Councilmember Jorstad, with maintenance workers. A couple years ago, we were able to find really skilled people with construction background and knowledge and experience. And lately what we've seen is just the pool's really dried up, and it's almost like if they got a pulse, we're considering them, right? And then there has to be additional training and things that go with it. But very difficult. There's so many private sector jobs out there and a lot of government work going on that's paying prevailing wage that pays double what we pay for an entry-level maintenance worker, or even a crew worker too, somebody with a CDL to come in that's fully trained and has that license. They can just make so much more money. And you're seeing this, I guess, younger workforce that really isn't looking for the long-term retirement. It's how much money can I make now? And yeah, city jobs are great jobs, but it doesn't seem like that's a big draw like it used to be. And as you know, we struggled finding seasonals. I mean, every city that I've talked to is in the same boat with even just trying to find a college kid to work or any seasonals to come and work temporary part-time. We still never filled all our positions, and then they'd end up leaving a couple weeks into it. They found something better, a full-time job. So I think we're facing the same challenges that I think regionally for hiring and getting new people on board that are skilled and able to come here. So it just means all the more important to get our safety training up to date and our training program for these new employees that come on board, because I don't think we're going to be able to hire skilled people like we have in the past. So,
and this is from where you sit. This is not a Lake Stevens issue. This is a just sort of a public works sector issue in this region.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I think finding good people is an issue everywhere, whether it's, in the private or public sector. I mean, everyone I talk to is having a hard time finding. Everyone's, quite frankly, overpaying for people right now just to get them in the door. So I think that's a real challenge for you, Eric, especially with when you say non-skilled. That's a hard one.
And one of the things I'd like to add in on this, if I can, on this chart is a focus, and you'll see as we build this budget, a focus I want to take the city for next year is to focus on APWA accreditation, American Public Works Association accreditation, and as well as asset management and asset maintenance tracking within the city and building out those systems. So when we looked at this chart, we also asked those questions. Hey, if we're going to do APWA accreditation, and if we're going to follow those very stringent steps to up our game as a city when it comes to public works and build out the asset management and asset tracking maintenance of what we have in the city, these are the positions that we're going to need as part of that process. So we took that in mind as we built this chart.
I think that's important also. We just got an audit exit conference from community transit, and they did an asset management audit on community transit. And while we did well, we did get a management letter that said, you need to improve. And they also said that the state is auditing asset management more and more now. So that's going to feed into that really, really well.
Council President Daughtry, would this be an appropriate time for me to read a comment from Councilmember Dickinson?
Sure.
Okay. Her microphone is not working. Unfortunately, she's listening in, but she can't speak. So she just wanted to make sure that I made a note that she says, hopefully we will find the funding to give the support to our police and to our public works department that they so desperately need.
Thank you, Councilmember Dickinson, and thank you, Kelly, for sharing that. Are there any other questions for Eric? Any other comments? The only comment I would have is the same comment I made for the police department, so I could just say ditto.
Thank you all.
Okay, let's move on to parks. So I think Russ is going to start us off with this one.
Okay, so over the last few years, we've had numerous discussions on how we do the build out of the Parks Department. The strategy we had been working on for a number of years was really an incremental approach where we were filling staff positions. Specifically, we've added the marketing specialist. We have the Parks and Rec planning coordinator. Obviously, we have the positions in Public Works that do the maintenance. And coming out of the council's retreat recently, there was another suggestion that maybe we look at a different model to start building out this department and really adding the leadership first, and then combining that under a core group, and then build out the remaining staff positions over the next few years. So we just wanted to present a couple of alternatives for council to look at tonight, consider as we all finalize our budgets and look at what those budget impacts would be. So I'm happy to take any questions or comments. Or Anya, if you had anything else you wanted to add.
I would just say that based off this proposal, if we were to hire a director and this field supervisor that's needed over parks, that would allow a director to come in and then be able to evaluate the needs of a parks department and be able to hire those positions in the forthcoming budgets in 2023 to 2025.
In the meantime, we're still relying on Public Works to take care of the parks.
Correct.
I'll jump in. I'm a big fan of looking to hire the director sooner than later. It's always easy to do a bunch of things okay, but to do one thing great, that's what we need. We got to have the leadership. We've done a really good job. Council's supported the Parks Rec Department every year, and we've got beautiful facilities. We're seeing, we're well over $100,000 of revenue from the mill already. So we're doing some great things, but as we continue to build out our parks and we actually start bringing the recreation side in, I just think it's critical to have a leader here that is focused on parks. That's their expertise. You don't go to a veterinarian to get your teeth pulled. You got to get the expert in there. And so sooner than later, I would like to see this position filled as we continue to grow the city.
I'm going to jump in. I have been in support of moving in this direction. I think since the first retreat I went to in February of 2020, I really feel like we're investing so much money into our park system and creating spaces where our citizens can enjoy their families and make memories. And just talking about span of control in terms of the Public Works Department, moving this out from under Public Works helps address the span of control issue and creates, I think you just said it, Jean, creates someone whose sole responsibility and hopefully passion is to continue to not just keep what we have beautiful, but really have a strategic approach at what our park system looks like moving forward. We're certainly not done. And I think we need a person where the parks is their sole responsibility, and that's what they're focused on. So I am supportive of also moving forward sooner rather than later. And I like the idea of getting the leadership in place, having them do the work to assess what's needed moving forward.
Councilmember Frederick.
Yes, I will echo a lot of what Councilmember Jorstad just said. Definitely in favor of getting the parks department going sooner than later. I actually prefer the idea of starting with the leadership first, opposed of the previous approach that was mentioned. I see this as scenario one, so I don't want to throw all of my eggs in the let's go with this idea basket. But one question, and I think I probably know the answer. I know the costs are kind of built out on what this person would cost over the course of the entire year. I guess my question would be, is there any anticipation that we know potentially who those individuals are, or in fact, will there be savings on these amounts? Because we're going to have to go through a recruitment process and developing position descriptions and all of those things. So while the annual cost might be $190,000, these people may not be in place until March or April, sometime down the road. So it's not going to likely cost that full number.
No, I would look at, under this proposal, it would be a half of the year position. So during the first half of the year, we'd be looking at comparable cities, getting those job descriptions together, really doing some policy work around a parks department, then starting that recruitment. So it would be most likely second to third quarter that this person would come on board. And then obviously some transition period where, Director Durpo and myself have to start divesting ourselves of staff and training and, organization. So, and then just a place, for that person to sit, office space. So, I mean, there would be a lot of logistical stuff to go over the first part of the year. But yes, under your question, it would be not that full 190 for year 2022.
Okay, thank you.
And Councilmember Datra, you had your hand up for a minute, then took it down. Did you have a comment?
No, I agree. The question that I had is on the chart here. You've got the crew, Public Works crew leader. Is that the same people that are already filled out in the Public Works department, the blue, everybody in blue?
Most likely, yeah, we'd bring over that team. That would be a discussion we'd have to have, with those people, obviously Director Durpo, if there was an option for them to transition into any other open Public Works spots. So I'd be willing to bet it might be a combination of existing and new staff that would make up that complement of workers.
And so when are we, which year are we looking at that happening?
It would be 22.
It would be 22.
Once the director's hired, then we would formulate the department. So we're thinking it could be mid to late 2022 by the time that happens.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Tadgett?
Just want to say I'm all in favor of putting a director in place. Long overdue. I know budgets are tough, but boy, our parks are so important and our community is so needing open spaces and so forth. Getting a director and then getting the needs figured out and keeping our parks beautiful and someone focused on that, that's great. And hopefully they can also generate revenue. If we're out there, if we have a parks person designated, hopefully we can go out and get some more free money from funds and so forth by putting out our requests out there. So
You think in like planting the trees that the money grows on?
if we could get some of those, we need a whole orchard. But
there you go. Anya, I have a quick question. On one of the budgets, I think it was the Public Works page, there was a line that said that some of the cost could be paid for using ARPA funds. Is that the only thing so far that is potentially, oh, there it is. The only thing so far that is ARPA fund eligible that we've talked about.
So far than anything new, correct? And that's referring to that engineering tech storm field tech position in the bottom right-hand corner.
Got it. Okay, thanks so much.
And we could skip ahead actually 2 slides. This is just one back one. The pros and cons of this first scenario, and then we're going to go into this next scenario. So if you can refer to that, this is just some quick pros and cons that the staff identified of, building a department head or hiring a department head first versus building it from the bottom up in scenario 2. So this is scenario 2.
Anya, hold on a minute. I'm sorry. We got to back up just a bit. Councilmember Jorstad just brought up the thing about the ARPA funds eligibility, 98,489 for the engineering tech storm field tech. It was my understanding that we put that on hold, that position on hold until when, Eric?
Am I there?
Yeah.
My computer's acting funny. Well, the original thought process was that we put that on hold until Troy and his department filled his GIS analyst person, and we got the actual bones, the Esri and the system built out to actually track our assets. And we worked towards that goal and got that done, and that person's hired, and he's been making great progress on getting the backbone of our GIS infrastructure system, because that storm tech person would actually be the one that coordinates all the layers and the stormwater improvements and tracks the ponds and all the other things that go with it. So
are we still thinking that we're going to get this person in 2022 or 2023?
2022.
Oh, okay, good.
Is the way it's listed out here.
The original thing that council member Jorstad came up with was ARPA funds, and the ARPA funds have to be spent by 2024, if I'm not mistaken. So when I saw the hold off until, I wasn't sure what that hold off was. So thank you very much. I appreciate that.
You bet.
So Councilmember Daughtry, on that note, I would actually like to bring that position on sooner than later. That's going to be a key position in building out the 8 asset management and asset maintenance, because that's the person who's going to be in the field telling us yes or no that storm drain is actually there, or
right,
yes or no that garbage can is actually there. So I would actually like, under ARPA money, to put out for hiring that sooner than later, sooner than 22, because to bring that person on earlier just keeps us ahead of the game in doing this APWA certification and getting that the tracking set up.
I think that makes really good sense. I think given that we have the funds and that's the direction we're moving, and we need that level of information sooner rather than later, I would fully support making that happen quickly.
Yeah, I fully support that also. I mean, it just makes sense. All right, I apologize for putting the brakes on and backing us up, but had me going there for a second. So Anya, back to you. Thank you.
No problem. I'm going to pass it right off to Russ.
Okay. So this is the build out of community and development over the next few years. This follows the model that we've shown you for quite a while, including the parks piece, which I'll go over quickly. So the plan, as we had grown incrementally, would be to add a recreation specialist this year. So that is another option. That person would be responsible to do all of the recreation programming, festivals that we've seen, start to take hold in the community over the last couple of years. But that would be a head point for that position, and then allowing the development coordinator to concentrate more fully on doing grants and construction management, and then the marketing specialist to really continue to focus on management of the mill and other assets that we bring on, for example, the Cedarwood facility. So that would be the next incremental growth. And then the management role for that, as far as a span of control, would come in 2023 in terms of a Parks and Recreation manager. So like we've seen in the other departments, we are trying to build in some redundancy and resiliency in some key management positions. And so for the sake of budget, this is how we have presented things over the last few years. But again, based on some of the conversation, we know we're at a tipping point for the parks division, which could go into its own department. The other part of the plans for my staff revolve around some reclassifications. Is there a question? Okay, so a couple of things I'd like to bring forward are some reclassifications. Currently, we had added the second building inspector, and we had a position called building inspector / plans examiner. And that person's majority duties are as a plans examiner. And so having the inspector is not necessary. So proposing a cleanup and then looking at the market, that position's a little bit under market rate. So there would be a salary adjustment to that. And then also proposing to reclassify the assistant planner to associate planner due to some staffing issues this year and just the sheer volume of work. She's been working on more complex projects that others maybe at a higher range would be working on. And so we'd like to make that move to recognize that work. Looking out to 2023, we would bring in another assistant planner, and that would be to help with the growth from the annexation. So those two reclassifications together is just about $12,000. And those are also a couple of positions that if council wanted, they could make those changes this year. There are salary savings and salary availability out of this year's budget. So that change could take effect as soon as council saw fit or be moved out to the first of next year. And the revenues would come primarily from the permit fund to pay for those reclassifications. The new position we would be adding is a dedicated plans reviewer for civil plans. And what that position would do, again, it creates some resiliency amongst departments. Right now, we have to send out a lot of our civil plan review to consultants. And also the public works staff does that with the needs they have though, and the needs we have, especially with City Hall and Public Works going into separate buildings just for the sake of customer service and continuity. We believe it's important to bring in a dedicated civil plans reviewer that would go under the building division. So that's kind of a snapshot of where we're headed for the near term, and happy to take on any questions. And one thing I'll say is we're sort of talking about comparisons to other cities. Now that we're just under 40,000, Edmonds becomes our nearest peer city in terms of size at about 42,000. And their development services department has about 21 employees compared to our 16. And that includes administrative, and taking into consideration 2 of the existing positions fill parks related roles. So across the board, all the departments are understaffed, but we've also have always been very cognizant of our budget limitations to do the best we can, with the tools and staff we have in place.
I guess I'll start. I don't see any reason we should put off the associate planner being reclassified till next year. If you can do it this year under what we have already proposed in the budget, I don't have any problem with that. And I think that was the only one that you said you wanted to do. Is that correct?
I would say the plans examiner as well.
What is his title now?
Plans examiner inspector.
Okay. Well, I'm a big fan of doing it now instead of in all this stuff. Is if you have the budget to do it and and putting it off doesn't make any sense because you're not looking to go out for a new person to fill that spot. You already have the person slotted. I'm in favor of doing it now.
Agreed.
And this leads us back then to the parks conversation. If the framework of the main components of the department, building and planning function, seemed to be okay, this was the other model then for parks that, again, we continue to build it out incrementally. And so that's a big decision point for council, that we are looking for some direction. We heard some earlier, and if that hasn't changed, I think we have our marching orders.
For me, I kind of agree with Kim for these two positions that we talked about, the associate planner and reclassification of the plan examiner / building inspector. If there's budget space to do it now, I don't see any reason why not to do it now. But I'm still in favor of the first scenario.
I agree with the first scenario also on the Parks Department. I think that's the better way to go.
Councilmember or Council President Daughtry, Mary Dickinson, has another comment. She says, I support the hiring of a parks director. Has anyone spoke with Joe Meese on this plan? I would love to hear her thoughts. And that's the end of her comment.
Okay.
I will add up in this slide, it's the separate Parks Department would start in 2025. It says see next tab. There's no next tab. It would just assume that in 2025 is in this second scenario that we would hire the director in 2025 and build out that department.
Instead of doing it now in 2022.
Right.
Then I definitely like scenario one better.
Okay, any more comments on the parks or community development?
I would like to make a general comment on all staffing. And that is that I recognize that the staff and the directors know what they need. They know where the budget is. They have all of the tools to use to reach those kinds of decisions on what they need and what they think they can put forward. But I think that I can speak for the entire council that we have always tried to do our best to get them what they need to do their job the right way. I applaud the amount of work that you guys have put into your staffing plans. I know it's a lot of work and you're busier than heck with everything else. And I really appreciate the work you've put into this, and I really want to move forward with your plans. And if we can add some additional ones in for the police department and public works at any time, then I'm all for that.
Awesome, thank you. Appreciate that.
Except HR. I'm not going to do anything in HR.
All right, well, finance is next, thankfully. And Barb is not here, so I'm going to fill in for her. There's no 2022 requests. She got the finance manager and she did a short presentation earlier this year about her org chart. So she didn't have a lot of updates anyways. We are going to be hiring this public works accountant soon. And then just based off her structure from last year and her thoughts on growth of her department is adding 2 accountants in 2023 to 2025. And she lays out in the next slide those details on what they would be doing. And then if we were to bring back passport services, this is a thought on how we would place them. And the difference from last year's plan to this year is originally we had a passport supervisor just supervising passport staff. And what we're proposing now is maybe an office supervisor to also supervise reception and passport services to help that span of control of the finance director. So no requests for 2022. So that's, if you guys have any questions for me, I can try to help answer them. If not, we can just move on.
Did we have that much passport going through our city at the time?
That's a great question for someone that was here at the time. I believe, is what I've been told, is that passport positions end up paying for themselves. I don't think that it increases any revenue on our side, but it just pays for itself.
Okay, we did. The passport was very, very busy.
Wow.
So they did quite a bit, and you could probably ask Julie Hubert to get some stats on that, and there, because they're looking at a full-time person just doing that at some point. So it was very busy.
No, I don't really need that information. Anecdotally is fine. It just
Okay,
seems
yeah.
kind of like that's a lot of people to be doing passports. I didn't think it was that busy.
Councilman Daughtry, this is Chief Pizzo. So yes, when we had the passports down at the police department, it was a full-time job. I mean, our office was busy every day with folks coming in and out of our office. I believe it was around 150,000, I think we made per year on passports. So that just gives you amount of, people call us all the time still wanting to get passports. So it's a good service to have if you want to bring community together.
Wow, good. I had no idea.
So we generate 150,000 in revenue off passports.
That's
And
what
why
we
did-
had when we were at the police department. I don't know what the last total was. That's the last figure that I had was a couple of years ago when we did have them.
So why then did we do away with doing something that was making revenue for the city and provided a valuable service? That doesn't make any sense to me.
We didn't have the space, Councilmember Ewing.
Yeah.
When we were in transition to the new building and into City Hall here, we didn't have the space to do it. You've got to have a dedicated area for families to come in, fill out the paperwork. You got to take pictures if someone want to have pictures taken. So there, just logistically, it didn't work, but we want to get back to it. I'm a big supporter of it. I've been a passport administrator before at my past job, so I'm very familiar with it. I'm a big supporter of it. I think it's a program the city should fund and provide.
So with the new police station, and I'm speaking from someone who had received those services shortly before you guys shut down. They were very efficient, very helpful. I don't think the space demands are really significant. But I think with our new police station being significantly larger than the old one, that we could probably figure out a way to make that work.
We can look at that. Ideally, it would be operating out of City Hall. It seems to be a better fit. And from my experience, customers coming in are more comfortable coming into a City Hall versus a police station to have those services provided. I'm used to it falling under administration versus police, but we could certainly look at all options.
Yeah, wherever it's housed, that is an option. But if it's housed at City Hall, most of our city staff are working from home now. So that provides a little more flexibility.
Yeah, just to follow up, I hear a lot of chatter still about people wanting to be able to have passport services within our city. And I do know it was a pretty busy service, given that it does pretty much pay for itself. Maybe not the first year as people get used to being able to have that done again in our city. I would really love to see how we could make this happen sooner than 2023, if that's at all possible. I know COVID is a little bit of a barrier. Hopefully we're moving towards it being less of a barrier, but I would super support figuring out a way to implement this next year and not wait till the following year.
Any more comments? And I'll bring these back to Barb and we can discuss that. Trying to see if we can make this happen sooner with the space needs and whatnot. And okay, let's move on to IT. So Troy, would you like to?
Yeah, sure. Sorry about that. So yeah, as you can hear from every department here that is seeing the demand and growth, almost everything that is delivered to these departments is, is driven by technology. And we've seen quite a bit of that happening with all these different changes and projects that are taking place. So what I've looked at, obviously I'm not participating or not anticipating like next year having any kind of staffing increases, but I look at this as kind of a dependent as how we, move forward with the sewer district as well. I think that, if we have, clear indications that we're going to kind of merge with that, I definitely want to make sure that we do bring on additional staffing because at that time, because we're going to be taking on additional needs. And I want to make sure that we have the staffing ready, trained on the current systems as we start, providing additional services for the additional staff they might have, as well as their systems that are going to be unique to their environment. So, and so as far as what I've been looking at here is with Carter, we looking at kind of a reclassification. Carter, he's been a phenomenal employee with us and really provides such a deep analysis on root cause of issues and has, sussed out some very complex issues and made some great solutions for us. And so he's been kind of taking and focusing a little bit more on a lot of these projects and some of these applications that we keep taking on, video management systems and other applications that we're bringing into the environment here. And so it is driving up a lot of his time on that stuff. And so he's kind of been feeling a little bit like trying to juggle the help desk and the end user support issues while trying to maintain some of the things that he's trying to accomplish. And so I definitely see that an additional help desk support person that can take some of that load off would be amazing. As we were looking at to kind of touch on with Eric and looking at the storm tech with where we need to go with our enterprise tool sets. We're evaluating that process right now. We're in the process of doing some demos and doing some scoring with our needs assessments and evaluating what's going to make sense for us moving forward. But you're right, for the accreditation process, as I've looked into this, for the years that we've been, supporting this stuff and trying to evaluate what direction we've been wanting to go with our GS asset management system, we're seeing that to be able to effectively manage the department, that system in itself could be a full-time job because it covers a lot of different departments. And there's so much with digging into building up evaluations and risk and project budgeting and conditions and stuff like that. There's so much work that goes into that, as well as trying to train and deploy the different types of applications and templates to the individual departments to meet their needs. And so what we're seeing with Zach is, he's been doing an amazing job with GS right now. And as a GS as a platform, we're seeing there's already kind of like a backlog of wants and wishes from the planning department on special maps and analysis, and so we know that this is going to be a growth thing with GIS, and so he's been kind of looked into setting up with Shannon on our ViewWorks system that we currently have. And he's done a really good job and, as far as getting into that and trying to work on that system there. But I definitely see that as we try to, mature out that model, that there's going to be a need to break this role up a little bit differently and have someone more dedicated to some of the applications while he's focusing heavily on the GIS aspects of that. Like I said, GIS is a development platform. There's tons of different types of applications and services that can be built on top of that and provide for citizen services, whether they're internal or external. So I just see that, especially as we look at, with the sewer district, we need to evaluate our financial system as a whole as we start to look at integrating our solutions. We're just, and I'm being very conservative here. I'm a very conservative person. So, definitely we don't even know what the additional needs for network and telemetry or SCADA, from a networking standpoint with the sewer district. So those are some of the unknowns. So this is very conservative in my opinion, but this is kind of where I see we're going to need our needs for the IT department to meet your guys' needs. So, do you guys have any questions for me?
What is SCADA?
That is all of the monitoring software for the sewer lift stations and pump stations, and it's a control system. And there's a lot of regulations that go around SCADA, and I think that I don't know exactly how they're currently doing it, if it's outsourced. These networks are typically isolated in some ways. But when we're looking at some systems that might actually be able to bring some value into the asset management stuff, at least from some of the trigger stuff. So when you look at our GS asset management system, these things, not only do they just have ability to look at these assets, they also can take in telemetry data to trigger events in the system to spawn a work order process. And so to get those integrations to other systems like that, that's what that is. Lift stations, or maybe like your outflows, like we're putting in an outflow, and that system has some telemetry data that is going to collect for lake levels and some of those things. That data can be ingested into the GIS system. That then the work order system sets basically kind of like condition triggers that can spawn work orders or responses. So lots of stuff like that are foreseeably coming down the pipe.
One more question. Just considering what that system is and the complexity, and just kind of recognizing critical infrastructure and cybersecurity. I don't see a position here that's necessarily dedicated towards cybersecurity.
Yeah, I can speak to that. We because of that, you're right. That's a huge thing. So what I've done, because we don't to have a full-time security analyst for the city would be awesome. It would be amazing. But usually that is a pretty big ticket and a full-time job to monitor all of our advanced logs and triggers and stuff like that. Fingerprint it. So what we've done at this point, which is I would consider it an intermediate step to where we would go into a maturity model, but we're using CI Security, which is a third-party managed detection response company. So what we do is we have an appliance in place, and they're basically collecting all of our data logs, and they have a 24/7 network operations center that is analyzing the data and looking for any kind of exploits. And we have like these monthly meetings, reports, and hey, this is what I saw. This is no big deal. We saw this activity. So they're kind of being our eyes on the network right now.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right. It's a full-time job to manage security, and that's just on your normal internal, external systems. But you also have cloud security as well, as we've moved into the cloud. So, yeah, one of the things that to better handle that, which something I'm putting into my budget, kind of next year, is to step up a couple of our Office 365 license to the G5 level, because we don't currently have. There's a certain feature that we get once we elevate a few licenses to that level that allows the CI security to get deep analytics into the Office 365 space so that they can analyze that data for threats as well. So.
Okay, thank you. I just had some questions. I've been following a couple of fairly high-level cyber attacks, and it sounds like with the chance of us potentially having some critical infrastructure that kind of has its own networking piece,
you're right, and those things will have. I think that the requirements for a SCADA environment, they have periodic cybersecurity audits that have to happen. So that would be something. I'm sure that they probably do that now, but that's typically done by an independent third-party company that comes in and does, if it's yearly, like a yearly audit and assessment. So yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm. Okay, if there's no other questions for Troy, we will move on. Okay, now we're at HR, so digs are welcome. So one thing as we've gone through this year is the recognition of the importance of safety and our safety program and our emergency management as we've gone through COVID. And the lack of programs that we might have, and lack of, I guess, time that we have to dedicate to these programs. And it is a full-time position. It probably could be a full-time position for each of them, but we're being realistic here. And the next slide, you don't have to go to it, Kelly, right now, but it goes into detail. You have it in your packet on what a safety emergency management coordinator would do. It's actually pretty expansive. Safety is really important, as you know, and it's time to dedicate for the size of a city outpacing our growth so fast. We need someone that can come in and keep our policies up to date, administer policies, administer training, do field inspections, and through all of the departments, not just a public works area or police. You know, we have very different positions require different policies and different regulations for safety and OSHA considerations, and to have somebody dedicated full time to that is very important. Along with the emergency management coordination, I'll let Chief Bezizzo talk a little bit about that because he has been trying to do work on that kind of stuff in the last couple of years, from my understanding. So, Chief, if you want to chime in here.
Yeah, so I'm the emergency management coordinator for the city of Lake Stevens. When I came here as the commander, I worked with the partnerships of Snohomish County Department of Emergency Management and other partners around the region. And this has become a full-time job trying to get us up to where we need. We had to do a comprehensive emergency management plan, get that in place. We had worked with the 2015 hazard mitigation for the county and got that updated here just in the last year and a half. And it takes a lot of time. And right now, you know, with the position that I'm in and trying to fill it with another person in the police department, it's hard. Craig Valvik, Sergeant Valvik, has been doing it with me as an assistant. Unfortunately, he rotates from days to nights. When he becomes on night shift during the middle of the year, it becomes very tough to be able to coordinate our local city emergency management team and also meet all the partnership and regional meeting requests that come in to be able to handle events. We also run our events through the city, through the emergency management team, to make sure that we're all prepared and do an incident action plan to meet the needs of the events that are coming in. So it takes a little bit of time to put those plans in place, come up with the resources and the logistics, and it is very time consuming. So I would really support having that position tied into a new position with the safety coordinator.
And I will add, before I answer questions, as we build out the HR department or safety, we would foresee that we would need a risk manager to oversee that, and it'd be a separate department potentially off of HR, or it could be under HR. We've talked a little bit about that, how it's over the entire city. And that position, risk manager, would be over claims and our insurance pool and running through that and working with customers on liability claims and reviewing contract language and advising staff on contracts and professional services and events, and lots of details on that on the risk management side that currently HR and me and Julie Good do it currently.
Councilmember Jorstad.
Thank you. I know Council President Daughtry, you're not a fan of funding HR, given your earlier comment, but I'm gonna speak out against you. No, it's in all seriousness. I think it's kind of asinine that our chief of police is also our safety management coordinator. I feel like, given that might have worked 10 years ago, but I think Chief Bezizzo has probably his hands full without also taking on the responsibility of the city safety emergency management coordinator. I would love to see this happen sooner rather than later. I realize we're talking about the 2022 budget, and so maybe sooner is January 2nd, but I think it needs to live under HR. I think, you know, after COVID leaves, there's going to be another, you know, there are going to be big things that the city needs to manage, and we need to have a plan in place. We need to have some oversight in place around our policies. I think we've had some incidents recently where if we potentially had someone who was sort of organized and looking at city policies and procedures, some of those things may not have occurred. So all for this, 100%. I'd like to move in this direction. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm also all for this. I know I made a flippant comment before, but that was just because everybody's so bored right now. You know, we're just talking about people and oh my God.
Oh gosh, now you're calling me bored.
Well, you know, I just figured I'd pick on you, Anya, because you're talking a lot. So Jean, Anya, and Brett, my question is, what do we need to do at the councilmatic level in order to put the safety emergency management coordinator out for looking for that person now, to where we could bring them on January 2nd, as Councilmember Jorstad had suggested?
We would need to find funding. That's the big question, is how do we fund these positions?
Well,
Currently,
you're gonna fund it in 2022 anyway, right?
well, this is for all the positions, I think, is the big question, is how are we going to fund this entire plan? If, you know, I'm hearing a lot of support for all of these. How are we going to prioritize which positions come first? And how are we going to pay for this? And if we wanted to bring a position sooner than 2022, what we would do is hurry up and finalize a job description, do a salary survey, get it to council, for their review and approval on establishing a salary so we could go out and recruit.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question. Councilmember Marcus Tangent.
Yeah, I'm hearing what Anya is saying is like, we're gonna need to find funding sources for this. We have a lot of needs out there. You know, we start talking about police, which I'm all for safety and making sure our officers have the people they need. We talk about parks, and then we talk planners, public works. I mean, we've got a pretty big budget that we're looking at here. I really think we need to look at the numbers and figure out the funding sources for some of this stuff. Just saying, I think that would be in order to try to really take a look at it. We have a lot of projects we still want to do in the city. And it's not that I'm for, I know we always do a lot with a little, but I really think we need to look at funding sources for all these people, because we're talking a lot of people and millions of dollars in staffing. So just saying, it would be nice to take a look at it and understand that a little better too.
No, I agree.
So, so
ahead,
I
Brad.
think, and Anya, you might be able to, might be more of a Barb question. I think emergency management expenses can fall under ARPA. And maybe we look at ARPA funds to do some initial covering of that position.
It may be possible since we don't have one in place. So we can look into that.
Troy, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to just kind of also just reiterate around the risk here is it is something I've kind of brought up that so you may not be aware, but the WCIA has reduced the cybersecurity insurance levels. It used to be quite high, and they have dropped that down to, I think it's about $50,000, which a lot of cities have been kind of railing behind that. Like, you know, what happens if we do have a breach? We're not going to, you know, be able to kind of handle that scenario. And so, yeah, having a risk manager is really key. That kind of helps to set what that policy looks like and what kind of coverage we should be having, as well as, you know, performing like more of a risk assessment on, you know, what is our sensitive data sets that we need to also protect. So I just want to throw that out there that yes, it is, I can see that.
Okay, thank you. Gene, you got your hand up.
Oops, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember. I just want to speak to the risk management position. This is critical. They also handle all the claims that come through the city. Somebody, you know, gets a flat tire and files a claim. Those go through the risk management office. There's a lot of responsibility. And like Anya pointed out, all of our policies, safety procedures, that goes through risk management. What we have, or I will be bringing back to the council as an interim action, is I've called it a massive favor. The risk manager that worked for me in Monroe was there 30 years, was on the WCI board before Mary Swenson stole her and brought her to Marysville to clean Marysville up and get them in order. And this individual actually retired from up there, able to pull her out of retirement to come work part-time for us to handle our affairs and get us up to speed. So in the next couple of weeks, I'll bring that proposal in front of council. It'll be a part-time position, but we have to deal with this. We are lagging behind and we need to get our affairs in order. So I'll be bringing that interim step forward in the next couple of weeks.
And that's for the risk manager, not the safety emergency management coordinator.
Correct, two different things.
Okay, thank you. I look forward to that. Are there any other questions for Anya about the org chart, or Anya, do you have anything else you wanted to talk about?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Hey, Anya, quick question. So I did my crude math going through. I came up with about 1.5 million of ask from the different departments. Is that about what you came up with?
Yes, so I have a little shy of 1.5 million, and a little shy of 1 million is the general fund. the rest is kind of distributed between streets, storms, and permits.
Thank you.
I can send the council some detailed information on the spreadsheets of the 2022, actually the entire plan on how we've broken it down and how we've estimated the salaries and each allocation where we would think it would be allocated towards which fund.
I appreciate getting that.
Yeah, that would be a good thing to look at.
Okay, last but not least, this is just a quick overview of the city administrator's office. And the only update to this would be adding the parks director if council chose to move forward with that. And Jean, you're free to talk about your own area if you'd wish.
You did well.
That one's easy. And I think that brings us to the end. I think the big theme here, just in closing, there is one more slide. This just shows if we were to adopt this plan through 2025, what our FTE count would look like in each department and our total at the end. So you're looking at adding about, 35 staff in the end of 3 to 4 years.
Hey, Anya, one other question, ask if it's not too burdensome. So looking at the 2021 city personnel comparison, all but one of the cities has other things that we don't offer in the city, included in their staffing models like fire or municipal court and things like that. Is there a way that we can flush out the positions that are tied to that so we can make a fair comparison? Because when I look at like Tukwila, they've got 22,000 people and they have 15 FTEs per 1,000 people, and we only have 2.4. But they have fire, parks and recreation, human service, and municipal court tied up, and we don't. So I'm wondering if we can make a fair comparison, if there's a way to flesh those out.
We could. Most of their organizational charts are not available on websites. So what I'd have to do is individually request or file public records requests for the organizational charts and be able to see their full structure, which I can do. It just might take time to get those back, just depending on their responses. But I can definitely go through and do that.
Yeah, that'd be helpful just to see exactly where we are in comparison to the other cities. To kind of see where we fit, because we saw with public works and with the police, there's kind of a general standard, but just citywide for comparable local cities, that would be helpful for me.
I guess, sorry, I'm kind of thinking out loud. I feel like our department directors and our administrator have made a really clear case for why we need the positions that we need, at least for this next year. And comparisons are fine, but there's so much variable between city to city. I think even if you spent, I don't know, how many hours would it take you on you to do that work? I think you're still it's not gonna be apples to apples. And so the comparison we have is general. I guess I don't feel the need to have that data in order to make the decisions that we're making tonight. So that's my point.
Any other comments or questions for the staffing plan?
I will, since Councilmember Ewing brought up this census, it is in your packet. We didn't really refer to it. It's more just information for the council that we've provided in the past to show how we compare to other cities. Not necessarily a deciding factor, but it does show an interesting information to show that we are, well below our population, but that always doesn't mean everything. It's not apples to apples. So it's just kind of ancillary information.
And I might add, I've been here for a really long time and seen the city kind of just grow and double, in size and complexity. And what I would say to a little bit of that, when you look at some of those other cities that have, they've been around for a really long time. They probably have really well-defined processes. We're growing so fast. There's been so much change. We're playing catch up. So in that sense, it's like we need a lot of help to get us to be able to keep the pace that we're going, as well as trying to improve our processes as we go. So that's my one added, to that. So.
All right, thank you, Troy. Anything else?
I will say, there are a lot of asks, and it is a lot of money. And I think, talking with Barb is, how do we fund this? That's the big question that we would like council to help us figure out. Is these are the needs, and we need your support moving forward on funding it. So I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, gives us plenty of things to talk or to think about, and lose sleep over. See what we can come up with. It's going to be an interesting budget. Thank you for all the hard work for all of you that did that and put that together. Let's go ahead and move on to the replacement of police fleet vehicles. Chief, you're on again.
Thanks, Councilman Daughtry and council. Every year we have to come to you to ask to spend the 2022 funds for our police vehicles. This gets to be very a complicated situation due to the fact that the factory's timing to get the patrol cars made and the product over to us takes several months. It could take anywhere from 6 to 8 months right now on this time frames. And then the equipment to put inside those vehicles start to become an issue because the factories for Wayland close down in November and December and don't start becoming operation until the first of the year. And then you can imagine all the police agencies trying to buy their equipment the beginning of the first of the year, we get more and more delayed. So we're just asking to spend the 2022 budget for 3 vehicles that we need to replace, get permission to do that here now and start purchasing the equipment and purchasing the vehicles with the process of that being in the 2022 budget. We're also going to come and present a lean process that we started on this to start fixing this. So we don't have to keep coming back every year and asking to do this. We're going to lay it out in the budget for this 2022, look at 2023 through to 2025 and come up with a better plan. So we just don't have to waste our time and spend more time till 8 o'clock for you guys. So
I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to ask. So if we keep doing this, why do we keep doing this?
I appreciate that.
Hey, does anybody have any questions for Chief Bezos on that?
Yeah, Chief, we in the past couple of years, we've been allocating 4 vehicles for replacement. Why only 3?
Because this is what we have for this year for a replacement cycle. So when I started the replacement cycle in 2017, we divided and tried to measure out the vehicles over a period of time. It really runs between 3, 4 to 5 vehicles over a certain period of time because we run the mileage to 100,000. One example is my vehicle. We bought my vehicle in 2019. It only has 15,000 miles on it. So we're finding out the more less use of the cars or the more use of the cars, we have to start replacing them. So we had to adjust our replacement cycle a little bit more. So that's what we have to do. We're just trying to offset it to keep it under funding right now.
All right, thank you.
So council, can we bring this back to consent agenda for next week? Seeing some head nods.
Put it on
Okay.
consent.
Affirm.
Okay, thank you, Chief. I appreciate it. Is there anything else for the good of the order? Anything?
I just want to know where we're going to plant the money trees.
Angie has a orchard in her backyard that we're going to use.
I mean, I feel like we've got some green space around. We can repurpose. You've got room in your yard, Sean, right? If we all gave up a little bit of our yard, seems like we're good to go.
I got room.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Gary.
Councilman or Council President Daughtry, when we're going to start seeing some preliminary budget numbers here from finance next week?
Next week, yes, we do have some. Barbara's bringing something forward to us on some preliminary numbers.
Okay.
Is that right, Kelly? Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yes. And Councilmember Peter Shagan, would it be helpful if you saw our budget calendar, kind of our tentative dates looking out through the year for budget presentations?
I think so, to kind of see what we're anticipating here.
Yeah.
We've
I
got to
think
get
that'd
this
be
adopted by
Okay.
the second week in December, I think.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Yeah. I'll give you guys the list of proposed dates coming up.
Great.
Okay,
Thank you.
Mhm.
Mary, you've been kind of quiet tonight. Oh, that's right. You didn't have a. Sorry about that. All right. I'll give you a call later, Mary, and we can discuss some things as we usually do. Anything else?
Happy last
All
day
right.
of summer.
Yeah, last day of summer. Thanks. I really needed that. All right,
Good night, everyone.
7:33, and we are adjourned. Thank you very
Good night.
much.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.